And we're ready whenever you are, Mayor.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for attending tonight's City Council meeting. For those who are attending remotely, the camera in council chambers is set up to show those attending in person tonight. The platform we are using has a raise hand feature. You will notice a picture of a hand in the upper right-hand corner. When we reach the point in the meeting where the public has the opportunity to address council, you can click that button to be given your opportunity to address council. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Following the pledge tonight, we will take a moment of silence in memory of retired firefighter Terry Shaver, who passed away June 11th. We continue to express our sympathies to Terry's family. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Tulley?
Here.
Councilor Selly?
Here.
Councilor Powers?
Here.
Councilor Scamperly?
Here.
Councilor Stevenson? Here. Councilor Trim? Here. Councilor Weaver?
Here.
Quorum present.
We have one presentation tonight from City Controller Angela Gray regarding a mid-year financial update.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Provided in the packet tonight are three reports. The budget report that shows our budget versus actual by expense type, also by department, and then a prior year comparative revenue summary. And so just to recap on these three reports, within the general fund, we have been from January to May 31st, which is the period covered by these reports, been collecting real property taxes within the comptroller's office. The warrant was 9.1 million, 3.4 belonged to St. Lawrence County, 5.7 million belonged to the city, and the city has collected their full 5.7 million, and we collected 1.65 million of county taxes, which is on the consent agenda for remission to St. Lawrence County. And this has been a significant change in cash flow to the better for the city of Ogdensburg, and this was the first year under the new collection system, so it has been worked out very well for us. Sales tax, also a significant revenue for us in the city. We have been tracking pretty diligently since we preempted, and it's currently averaging around $200,000 per month in collections. And so annualizing this number, we will come very close, if not slightly above budget of $2.5 million for the year. So that's a positive. Looking at the department income, which we'll show in detail on the prior year comparative revenue statement, this group of revenue spread throughout all of the revenue lines represents about 4% of the city budget. This is an area that we'll continue to monitor for the next 7 months. We have collected about 40% of the revenue. One of the areas that we will continue to focus on is revenue in the code enforcement office. This has the most significant variances year over year. And so the interim city manager and I have already spoken about this, and we will continue to monitor all of the departmental income, but this one as well within the next 7 months. Interest and earnings is reflective on the investments, and we had a budget number there of $180,000. Actual revenue collected in the first 5 months of the year is, if we annualize this, the 5-month average would predict that we will be very possible to end the year with a $100,000 surplus on this line. So revenue in the general fund, I would say in summary, is happening as expected and anticipated, and will continue to follow this throughout the year. The water sewer revenue is flat year over year, which comes as no surprise. This is what the budget called for. We do have rising costs, not unlike any agency, business, et cetera. So the recommendation going into the 2025 budget season would be to take a hard look at the waterfront, future needs via increased costs, capital projects, and consider the water rates perhaps differently for 2025. The sewer funds, the rates were raised 4%, and this is reflected as an increase of revenue. And also the Hubleton, this will be the first year that we've seen revenue from the intermunicipal agreement with Hubleton. And in our budget, we had $31,000 budgeted for the year, a bit of an unknown at budget time, and 5 months into the year, we've surpassed that budget, and this is an arrangement that we will continue to bill quarterly. So when you look at the Hubleton IMA line, that is representative of first quarter, and in July we will bill second quarter, and there will be 2 more quarters after that to get billed. So that is positive news for the sewer fund. Government spending, government-wide spending with all of the departments, if you were to review in reviewing the group summary by department report, we would typically, to say that spending is happening in line with the budget, look to see a percent remaining at 58% or better. And there's one department that is significantly below 58%. And that is department number 1620, City Hall building. And what that is related to are the renovations that were done by the court system. And there is a corresponding revenue line with that in account AA3021 to offset what looks like on the surface of a unanticipated expenditure, but it certainly was not. I just wanted to provide clarification on that department. And that is a high-level summary of the operations through May 31st, 2024.
Any questions for Angela from council?
I have one question.
Yes, please.
Angela, under prior year comparative revenue statement, account AA1130, utilities gross receipt tax, could you explain the huge variance there?
Sure, and I think Councilor Stevenson that is timing as to when the checks are received from the utility companies. So while that looks like there is a significant reduction in the 2024 year, this will catch up throughout the year, and there is no real, the utility companies deposit money with us from this tax on a quarterly or monthly basis, and so I believe it is just a timing issue.
Okay, I thought that was the case, but I wanted to make sure since it was so significant. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Any other?
one.
Go ahead.
Angela, under interest and penalties, is that figure derived from people being late for paying their taxes?
That is correct, yes. So we are able to, in the period of time that we're collecting taxes on behalf of St. Lawrence County, there's interest paid that we retain from that process. And there will also be the same with the school taxes that are also collected once they go into late payment status, and that's passed on to the comptroller.
So the late payment status then is actually, and including interest, is actually $27,000 lower. So does that mean that people are paying their taxes on time more often? Because, and I just asked that question because many people have responded that they didn't like paying their taxes in January, things like that. That sort of discussion or argument being presented to me. So I'm wondering if more people are paying their taxes on time, and that's why that figure is what it is. Do we expect that figure to rise or decrease?
I think that when we look back at history, we would expect that figure to decrease based on historical averages because the city is now paid first in the collection process. That's one thing. And so while they did not like paying the taxes in January, February, March, they were able to do so in 3 installments. And so the way that the new collection system works with St. Lawrence County, I would expect that number to not be as high as it has been in the prior years.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you for your report, Angela.
Thank you.
We do not have any public hearings tonight, so that brings us to personal appearance. At this time, if anyone attending in person would like to address council, please come down to the podium and you will have 5 minutes.
Been a while since I've been up here. I think you guys all know what I'm going to address. Thursday night, for the 4th time since the Patterson Street project was completed, 2015, 2016, my basement flooded. It wasn't just water. It's been sewage, untreated, raw sewage. It never happened prior to that project. I stood on my basement step the other night and I had it was a big pot that used to make chili in that in, but I had burnt stuff on it because I'm not that great of a cook. And it's about this high, this big around, it floated across my basement floor. Shampoo bottle floated out of the shower again. And I watched human feces float through my basement. When the water went down, I had, in plain English, one hell of a mess. There was human feces, there was sewage. Again, it's not the first time, it's not the second time, it's not the third time, it's the 4th time. And please, please, please don't tell me it's an act of God yet, because God didn't put feces on my basement. It's an inadequate sewage system. And I've heard, backflow valve. No person in this city that has a problem with sewage should have to pay to have that installed. It's not a landlord problem. It's not a homeowner problem. It's a city problem. Nothing from the road to the house caused the sewage to come in. It's from your sewage pipes. And it hadn't started until the Patterson Street project. I am not the only one. And it appears from what people I've been listening to people, reading different things, it's the side streets off of Patterson. People got nailed with sewage again. And it's a health hazard. It's raw, untreated sewage. Somebody's got to take accountability for it, and it should not be the homeowner, the landlord, whoever, because no one did anything to create that problem. The problem was created by a project that was done I'm not going to finish that statement. It wasn't done right. And I really want to thank right now, I want to thank Shane for talking with me on Friday morning. He called me at 7:30 and we had a good conversation. And I don't believe we did disagree on one thing. I do not believe it's anything to do with the different weather patterns. We've had bad storms forever. I can remember being younger that was a long time ago, down on Ford Street by Grew Park. That used to be like a swimming pool down there. We had some really bad storms. And I don't believe it's because of the storms. I believe it's because of the way the projects were done. Now, maybe I'm wrong in what I understood, but the Patterson Street project, storm drain, sewage drain. until it hits farther down Patterson Street. And then it goes into one pipe. Who thought of that? I mean, that's ridiculous. Why did you waste all the money running two pipes only to run them into one? And then everything coming off of Riverside Ave. Well, I wonder why everything backs up. Those projects were ridiculous. It was a waste of money at the expense of the homeowner. And it shouldn't be. Somebody has got to do something. And I'll tell you, I'm not real keen on going down and cleaning all that crap every time we have a heavy rain. I lost over $2,000 worth of stuff the last one. But I smartened up this time. Because after that, everything is in totes. So now all I have to do is sanitize the totes. Last Thursday morning, I'm a volunteer. I do medical runs for people who can't afford transportation. I drove 595 miles Thursday. I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Got home probably 45 minutes before that storm hit. And I was up till 1 o'clock in the morning, scrubbing feces. I don't appreciate it. And I'm not the only one in this city. Something has to be done. A lot of people got flooding, water flooding. They didn't get feces. We're getting it off of Patterson Street. You've got to do something. It's a health hazard. It is a point blank health hazard. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Marilyn Shaver. I live at 1020 East David Street, and I'm here for the same reason she is. There's been problems on East David and Clark Street for 20 years. And it's apparently, there was a grant that was approved last fall. We just bought our house last year. There was a grant that was approved to fix the pipes and the sewerage system. And apparently, one of the guys from the city came to see if I needed pumping out after I did it myself, and said there wasn't enough money in the grant, so they can't do it. I have had several instances since we bought the house with a heavy rain, with rainwater. It doesn't come in where the backflow is. It comes in otherwise, which it doesn't go back out. I have to vacuum it up. It comes up through my toilet in the cellar and my shower. It just shoots up like a geyser through it. You just wouldn't believe it. And it goes all over. My basement is nice. Well, it was. And now there's sewage down there that I have to go down and clean. And it's totally disgusting. And apparently the sewage wasn't so much an issue before, but it is now. So I'm assuming, because we're right off Patterson Street, that that's part of the problem with us too. Now, Laura Lee told me, Rothel, that she's had sewer problems in her basement, and that when they were putting it in, she talked to the guy and said, you know, they're running them at the wrong angle. He says, "Oh, lady, are you an engineer?" She said, "No, but I can tell you, I know how the water runs." And he said, "Well, we're not interested." They weren't interested in hearing her. So apparently it wasn't done right. So I'm just wondering what happened to this grant and why isn't, you know, it's been 20 years. Apparently there's been grants given before for this and were never used. Maybe because we're such a small area, it's only a couple blocks down, one block that way. We're not important. You know, I'm thinking people that make these decisions lived where we live, it would be fixed by now. You know, we just bought the house from the Mopetites, and they didn't have sewage problems. They had water problems, and they had the backflow put in. The water doesn't even come in near where the backflow is, and it does not go out. I have to vacuum it. You know, I'm an old lady. My husband's disabled. I can't, you know, we can't keep doing this. Somebody's got to get it fixed. It's very, very frustrating. And my neighbors here, they have it worse than I do because their cellars, I mean, I probably got this much water in mine, but some of them had this much water in their cellars, and it's the whole block. So, I mean, something needs to be done because, like she says, it's not sanitary, it's not healthy. You know, people living in the house, and there's feces and toilet paper and all that down on my floor that after I suck all the water up, I got to suck that up and throw it out. I mean, I called the city. Nobody answered, of course. And so I said to my husband, call the fire department, see who we're supposed to call. So he called and they said, well, the fire department, the police department said, well, the fire department is pumping people out. And apparently they did go pump one of my neighbors out. He had like 24 inches of water. But I called and they said, well, someone will come. Well, nobody came. Nobody called. So good old Mar had to go do it. I just like to know what's going to go on with this grant. Are we going to get fixed or are we going to be left for another 20 years? So that's my piece. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marlene?
Yeah.
Did you say you're at 1028 East David?
1020,
1020.
the
Thank you.
corner of East David and Clark Street.
Okay, thank you.
Channel 7 was on our block last year, said that the evidence had been approved to get it fixed. And we didn't figure we'd be talking about that this year.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Andy West, 108 Franklin. I was here 2 years ago. My husband will be coming to address factual information as he talked to the DEC today. I'm not here to hear why we think this is happening. I moved into my house in 2004. I had a dry basement, so therefore all of my workout stuff is down there. Thousands of dollars of stuff. So that's why I have my stuff down there, because I've had a dry basement until 2 years ago. Since 2 years ago, I've also had 4 incidences. I just got a bill from a company of the tune of $4,000 for the cleanup that they had to do for the raw sewage that was in my basement. I'm not pointing fingers. I want to know as a taxpayer what your solution is. I had Shane ask me why I didn't get the backflow preventer put in the last time this happened to me. I'm not paying for something that's not my problem. Okay. It's not my problem. I bought the house. My house has had a dry basement for 17 years. I've already lost thousands of dollars because my claim didn't go through the city 2 years ago to get replaced. All of the equipment I've already was damaged. So I bought more. And now I have a $4,000 bill for the cleanup of the raw sewage in my basement. Again, all of my exercise equipment, all of my valuables that were down there. I pay taxes. Eric will address your concerns about what you say the DEC is saying you need to do with these things about why this is happening. So I'll let him address that. My other thing is I also pay for a slip down at the marina for my boat and my jet ski. I want to know what services that includes for the $1,300 that I pay. Because what all that's happening is the amount of seaweed that is accumulated down in that marina is causing boat problems, jet ski engine problems, etc. So yes, I have a place to park my boat. I very much appreciate that. What comes with that $1,300 that I pay for? I just wanted to know like what the amenities are for the $1,300. It's not anything that's helping me except for a place to park my boat, but it's certainly things that are hurting people. And you've noticed that probably lots of people haven't renewed their slips down there because of the amount of damage that the seaweed is causing to their like their jet ski motors and such. So just looking for solutions, not opinions, not answers. I gave you facts. This isn't, I mean, obviously this is a problem that has just occurred. And I don't know, facts, solutions, not opinions and why we think this is happening. Eric will explain to you what his understanding is of why it's happening because he spoke with the DEC person today. I would encourage you guys to do that as well after you hear what Eric has to say. Again, he got factual information and not things that we've been being told that are your opinions about what we think is happening. And again, we've had bad storms. I'm 49 years old. These storms aren't just bad the past 4 years, and that's why my basement's flooding. So, thank you.
Andy, is Eric calling in?
He's coming.
Oh,
He's
good.
on his way.
Anyone else?
Rob Sharp, 901 Clark Street. Basically, I'm here for the same reason these people are. Last year it was ruined the furnace. I had to put a new furnace in. This year it's the hot water heater. So we were a week with no hot water. We had to go over to the kids to shower, and it's raw sewage. It's not just rainwater. And this has been going on for 4 years. And the Christmas decorations, everything down there, how are you going to keep something that's covered in feces? I mean, it's disgusting. And I don't understand why something can't be done, corrected. And it's ever since the Patterson Street job. So I appreciate whatever you can do for us.
Thank you.
Well, I come tonight to support my neighbors. My name is Fred Carter, and I've lived there for 56 years of this nightmare. I put the trap in, I put the valve in, I've done everything. The other night was kind of sad to go down to my cellar and see that stuff running around on the floor. But the only thing I can tell you is this. It's not the engineer's fault, whoever's fault of this. We got to correct it. It's got to be corrected. I'm going to have to hire somebody to come in and go down in the cellar and clean it because of all the stuff that's happened down there. The smell is terrible. But I've been here, like I said, for 56 years on that street. And I know all about the flood and all about that. They did put storm sewers in there years ago. And I said to the guy when he was putting them in, where's it going? He said, dead heading down the street. Ain't gonna go anywhere, Fred. It's gonna keep right backing up. But the system is we're tied in somehow into that sewer system. My good friend that's passed away, Jimmy Bateman, owned the house that these people bought, the Shavers. He had 4.5 feet in the cellar one time. 4.5 feet. We pumped it out. We did everything we could humanly possible to try to stop it. Well, of course, Jimmy went a little too far with some ready mixed cement. But anyways, we straightened that out. But my trap's not working anymore, and I wonder, what's going to happen. J&M Mechanicals put that in. And basically, they're not in that business anymore. But that's all going to be concreted out or jackhammered out again and new valve put in because I don't know how to get in there to do it otherwise. So the floor is going to have to come up again, put another valve in. You people did it at that time. The city did it at that time, give me $500 towards it. So I don't know what the solution is. I was on the Bridge and Port Authority for 22 years. And when they did the Patterson Street construction, they held it actually up for a year until the Bridge and Port Authority put in their own entrance road down on Berry Street because we needed that street done. At that time, there was quite a bit of money in that project because they were going to use that street for the Bridge and Port Authority. Well, we found out to get the stuff that we were going to have coming in there, we couldn't make the turns up the streets and stuff. So we put our own interests in. In the meantime, that project went back and the money started moving around in different areas. So be whatever it is. But the engineering study had to come out during that time was East David Street needed to be done. Needed to have new sewer lines and new water lines and storm sewers. And at the same time, they wanted to put sidewalks down through there and patch the street. It's terrible going to our school in the city of Augsburg. It's just terrible. Kids ain't got no place to walk either. So the grant money is supposed to be somewhere. I think it's in the city somewhere, but they ain't got enough. Well, maybe we're going to have to go to bonding, do something. Take the grant money we got, put it out for bid and bond the rest. But these people deserve to have something better than what we got right now. And like I say, I've been in the city. I've been 79 years here all my life. I've never seen anything like this. And it's just not fair to them. So whatever you people can look up and figure out. I appreciate it for all of them, but it's not good. So thank you for your time.
Sir, can I ask what your address is again?
My address is 906 Clark Street. My name is Fred Carter. I'm sorry, I should have introduced myself. Yeah. But anyways, I just, I used to be the mayor of that street, but then another guy got there the job. So if you could help us out down there, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eric West. I live at 108 Franklin Street in Ogdensburg. My wife, I guess, has already spoken, and she texted me that I needed to get here on a slow jog. And I see that any money that is wasted in the city is not on the air conditioning in here. It's not hot. But I just wanted to point out a couple things, and I don't know what she's already talked about, but I did reach out to the DEC because I was kind of told to believe that this is like a requirement that they had, that we had to raise these weirs walls or whatever they're called to a certain level. And that is what has caused this in the past few years, and nowhere near Mr. Carter's time living here. But we've lived in that house for 20 years and it's never happened. And then in 2022, it was the first time that it happened. The city's recommendation was this, what was it called? Backflow. We did not get one. Our neighbors did on this latest event. The neighbors still got 3 inches in their house, but I guess if we would have had it, we would have been 3 inches shorter than what we got. So these 6 inches that we got, obviously, affected us like they've affected everybody else that's involved here. But with speaking with the DEC, what they explained to me was that it's not their requirement is 85% treated water to 15% untreated water is what is acceptable by DEC to be released. So what they're explaining to me is to go to the DEC locator map, check out the water facilities. It'll show the permits and reports that our city has provided to them, and that it is our city's recommendation that we raise those weir walls, not there. If we raise them to meet the requirement, because maybe that was the cheapest option at the time, then that's one thing. But I'm just explaining what I've been told, which is that it's not their requirement that we raise those weir walls. The requirement is that we meet those levels, the 85-15. So I don't know what a great answer to it is. I'm sure if it was our decision to raise those walls and to have that backflow happen, that it was one based on financial need, which I get. But I also understand that, 85%, 15%, I know the acceptable amount of sewage in my house is 0%, which it would be for anybody. So that is where our major concern comes in. So I was also told that the city manager is the one that recommended the solution with the raised level. Whether or not that's accurate, I'm just telling you what I was told. So hopefully we can fix it. Hopefully there's and I understand speaking to a council member that, if it means that my taxes go up, my water rates go up, my stuff goes up, I get it. I'll pay more. Just keep sewage out of my basement. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Darlene Lynch. I own a property at 807 Montgomery Street. And I don't want to be redundant, it's basically the same scenario. And it did contain fecal matter, which was very disturbing. And the level had went up. I know it was a terrible storm, this last storm that we had, the amount of water, it added to that as well. But it's really not acceptable. We've had water in the basement, which, you know, it's an older home. It was expected and things like this. Again, we lost quite a bit of property because of this. Whatever, you know, hopefully you look at it. I know everybody has to look at accountability, but I think it's a shared problem. I'm like, they mentioned this back valve. I researched it. It looks, you can get something very economical from $49 to $490. I didn't speak to anybody who does particular stuff. Perhaps there's remuneration from here to get the problems repaired. It seems as though there's a focal area. We are right off of Patterson Street, right by the Boys and Girls Club. The property is. I would have concerns being a nurse and that along that whole Patterson Street, there are several restaurants, and with hepatitis and E. coli and all those type things, if those things are in those basements where things are stored, there are spores and things like this. I do think that it's a public health. I did speak to the Department of Health. I work for Department of Health in a different capacity, and they're going to look into it as well. So whatever help you can do, it would be great. Thanks.
My name is Lori Doe and I live at 701 Riverside Avenue. And once again, it's the same issue. I did talk to Mike about it and I talked to Shane about it as well today, and both very helpful. I've lived in my home for 31 years and the last two storms, I had at least 2 feet of water in my basement. I just had a new hot water tank installed last summer and a new furnace in December. I was smart enough to ask them to raise both of them, but like I said, it was teetering on both of them this last storm. I talked to Shane about this as well today, and as Eric just stated, I've had different people tell me that the backflow valves sometimes aren't going to work and that they latch up or so that's why I was hesitant with the last storm to put one in. I was just thought maybe this was just an isolated situation. I think it all started when the pump house went down in the bottom of Elizabeth Street. And I know I'm also at the very end of a hill. I'm on Morris and Riverside. I just think I think the city should be morally conscious, and this is something that I think we all need to be helped out with. I have contacted a couple different people that are coming next week to give me an estimate on the backflow valve and to also give me some suggestions. So I'm hoping that there's something that maybe you as a whole can do to help us to rectify this and make it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Lori.
Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to address council, please use the raise hand feature. The city clerk will recognize and unmute one person at a time, and you will have 5 minutes.
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor.
Brings us to correspondence. Do we have any correspondence tonight?
We do not.
Brings us to the consent agenda. That the claims as enumerated in General Fund Warrant 12-2024 in the amount of $2,233,229.22, and Library Warrant number 12-2024 in the amount of $0, and Capital Fund Warrant number 12-2024 in the amount of $200,297.67, and Community Development Fund Warrant number 12-2024 in the amount of $75.98, and Community Renewal Fund warrant number 12-2024 in the amount of $0 as audited, being the same, hereby are ordered paid. I so move.
Second.
Questions? Kathy, please call the roll.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes?
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim, Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
approved.
We do not have any appointments tonight, so that brings us to items for council action. Our first item of business will be read by interim city manager Andrea Smith.
This is a resolution authorizing the submission of a 2024 New York Swims Initiative grant.
I'll move that.
Second.
Rather talk to us about this, Andrea, please.
Sure, so this application is due July 12th, and it provides funding to address swimming facilities, either pools or natural swimming facilities, specifically in distressed communities. Communities can apply for grants as low as $50,000 and up to $10 million. And grantees or municipal entities applying have to provide a 20% match. It is a reimbursable grant. So the city staff is recommending applying for up to $5 million, which would require $1 million match. This would allow the city, right now we do have to provide third-party estimates with the grant application, and we're in the process of developing those and really developing the budget. But we are looking at facilities that include new locker room facilities, so a new bathhouse. Right now, the bathhouse does not have hot water, which is not a Department of Health requirement, but certainly would make the restrooms much nicer. There's no privacy within the individual locker rooms, so we're really looking at a full top to bottom restoration and renovation of the bathhouse to include ADA compliance. We would be looking at addressing ADA compliance in the actual pool facility. Right now we have steps instead of a ramp, and we have a pretty antiquated chairlift, so implementing new ADA features in the pool area, and also looking at shade facilities and the possibility of whether or not we could accommodate a splash pad would also be considered in this application. Those are all eligible expenses, but there are some specific nuances in the grant that only allow certain percentages of funding of your overall budget to go towards what are considered ancillary improvements, which in this case would include things like the splash pad. So we're in the early stages of developing the budget, and that's why the request is for up to $5 million.
Questions or comments?
Andrea, with the city's 20% match, is there a possibility that that could be in the form of in-kind services or some of it in-kind services to do some of the work ourselves?
That's possible, although we have to provide a finance commitment. So I don't know that we can offset it all with in-kind services.
Okay. I see it's reimbursable, so I wasn't sure.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, just one, Mayor, if I can. With the 5 million, it's a good number. I think it's a strong number. And with that being said, with the additions to the locker room and the privacy matters and the ADA compliance, one of my biggest concerns regarding this, with that entire area, with our pool, is the infrastructure and some of the maintenance that's going to need to continue to go down the road. As this, if ancillary issues such as a splash pad will require obviously maintenance and whatnot. And I'm curious to know if, well, I suppose we should wait until the grant process is complete to break that down. But obviously the concern going forward is, and it's a blessing that we got the kiddie pool open this year, and that this is a great program. I think it's a great program that came to the governor's budget. But ultimately down the road for, a serious hard looks at a lot of the infrastructure and the maintenance and potential replacements, which you're well aware of, Andrea. But, with that being said, it's just something that we can't lose focus of. If we're successful in this grant process, and I believe we are. Could you explain a little bit maybe to the public as well as to how this is going to play out with the county as well?
separate from this particular funding opportunity, but also through the New York Swim program, is an opportunity for St. Lawrence County to obtain funding to offset costs for lifeguards and costs associated with lifeguards, so advertising, things of that nature. So we have submitted our budgetary costs, which in and of themselves for 2024 and 25 exceed what the county will receive. It's been capped at $50,000 for the entire county. So municipalities that are interested in receiving funding have been asked to provide specific numbers in various categories to the county so that they can put in a request to obtain that funding that has been allocated to St. Lawrence County, and so we're doing that.
Thank you.
Anyone?
Andrea, I noticed on page 8 that public restrooms are eligible to be included, which is something I feel is desperately needed in our Greenbelt area. And I'm just hoping we can include something along those lines for relatively vandal-proof facilities like we see at many of the local school districts and the Waddington boat launch and things like that. I'd appreciate it if that type of thing could be included and be eligible.
Okay, anyone else? Kathy, please call the roll.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim, Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by interim city manager Andrea Smith.
This is a resolution calling for a public hearing to provide public notice for a CDBG grant. Whereas the Ogdensburg City Council is desirous of hearing public comments on Ogdensburg's proposed community development block grant vacant property clearance program in an amount up to $500,000. Now therefore be it resolved that the Ogdensburg City Council shall hold a public hearing for the purpose of hearing public comment on the city's proposed CDBG vacant property clearance program project to be held in the City Council chambers at City Hall, Ogdensburg, New York on the 8th day of July, 2024 at 6 p.m. Be it further resolved that the clerk give notice of such public hearing by publication in the newspaper so designated by the City Council of the City of Ogdensburg for legal and public notices at least 10 days before the hearing date, setting forth the date, time and place, and publishing the attached legal notice.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Questions or comments?
My question is, a lot of times we get these CDBG grants and they're targeting a certain neighborhood. I didn't see anything like that in this yet. I don't know if that's going to be the case or if it's just a citywide, low income, moderate sort of a program.
This program is citywide and I'm not sure that we are applying or not. This is simply to have the required public hearing. This is a new program that provides funding specifically for demolition, environmental site assessments. It is designed for clearance of vacant property. The concern with this particular grant is that site control has to be clear, but it does not have to be that the city owns the property. And since the city is no longer foreclosing on property, our list of inventory in terms of property that requires demolition is actually quite low. But this is a new opportunity, so it's an opportunity to hear from the public in terms of whether they think we should apply, what properties they think are needing demolition so that we can look into it further. This is included in the notification of available consolidated funding application funds, but it does not have the same July 31st deadline. It has a rolling deadline until funds are exhausted or until December 31st of this year. So this is simply calling for the public hearing, which you have to do before you submit an application to help us get some initial comments from the public.
This would be to benefit private individuals as well as community if we had any properties and if we got the grant.
Potentially.
Okay. Well, when I see the principal purpose of benefiting low, moderate income persons,
all CDBG funding has to benefit low to moderate income persons. That is the goal and purpose of that program. This would be a very straightforward application for the city. This is maybe one of the downsides of no longer foreclosing on properties, that we don't have a good portfolio of properties to look at CDBG programming for, unless we're doing their homeowner renovation programs or something like that, which this is not that program. So it's just really an opportunity to take a look at what's out there. Specifically talking to our code enforcement officers, we still do have the ability to condemn properties, to acquire them through Article 19A foreclosures. We have the ability to conduct demolitions through orders of when a property owner is ordered to condemn or demolish a property and they don't comply with that. If it is a health and safety hazard, we can go in and take properties down, and we have done that. So it's looking at those types of properties, identifying where they are, and whether or not this is a good program to help offset those costs
For the city.
for the city. We would be the recipient of the funding.
Okay. So if somebody had a structure that they wanted torn down, could they apply for part of this money?
Only the city is an eligible entity. Private individuals are not eligible to apply for this CDBG funding. We would potentially work with private property owners if we were to receive this funding. But then that property would be restricted and have to comply with CDBG requirements. So we would really prioritize properties that we own, properties that we may need to do demolitions on through orders through the code enforcement office. That's really where we would start. Because most property owners don't want to take on the restrictions associated with CDBG programs, which the resulting property would have restrictions.
Like you couldn't build again? Or?
No, but it would have to benefit low and moderate income individuals.
Perhaps we should start maybe to, excuse me, consider foreclosing on properties.
It's interesting, you know, I mean.
Well, it would help with the grant process. I mean,
Really, I was just pointing out, I mean, Angela did a nice job of talking about the benefits of this new system. It's not all benefits. This is one very minor, I would say, con of the new system. And it's not necessarily a con. The county could apply for this funding and use it on properties that they're acquiring in the city. We could partner with them. We can partner with the land bank. This is simply an opportunity to have a public hearing and get the public's feedback on potential demolition of blight. This is only for blighted structures, so you can't just go demolishing perfectly good structures. But it's another tool given to municipalities to address blight and slumming in communities.
we need a code enforcement office for that before we could ever start thinking about foreclosures again. Anyway.
I was just looking at it as an opportunity. Let's say if somebody wanted to redevelop property, if they bought a piece of city property or they happen to own a property and there's a poor structure on it, they'd like to tear it down. If it's potentially condemnable, could they apply for this funding without losing the property? So maybe they want to build another house or something. Would that qualify somebody on here? I had highlighted principal purpose of benefiting low and moderate income persons. And so I said, oh, that's a good way for somebody in the city who has a structure that they want torn down so they can build a new one or something. You know.
So this is the call for a public hearing. Really can't stress that enough. It is my recommendation to call for the public hearing. And I will ask your new city manager if he would consider adding on the agenda a presentation prior to the public hearing, in which I'd be happy to speak in greater detail about the program and how we might use it. This is just a call for a public hearing.
Well done.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim, Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business we read by interim city manager Andrea Smith.
This is a resolution authorizing the submission of a 2024 Green Resiliency Grant Program application. Whereas
Would someone care to?
I'll move that.
there's a second.
I'll second.
Andrew, would you go into detail about this, please?
So this too is a new program available to municipalities in the state to address fittingly, maybe, stormwater management, stormwater runoff, and opportunities to reduce stormwater runoff. And municipalities are eligible to apply for grants as minimum applications are $1 million and up to $10 million. It is a reimbursable program, and the city would be required to provide a 10% match. So we are recommending applying for $3 million, which would require $300,000 match from the city. And the target area for this project would be the downtown mall area, which is about 5 acres of asphalt. There's very little green space within the parking area too that promotes stormwater runoff, reduces stormwater runoff, filtering stormwater runoff. So this has been a project that we've developed a little bit in concept through previous DRI applications and through a preceding program, which was the Green Infrastructure Program through New York State EFC as well. So we have some concepts for this. We have a budget for this. We have a preliminary engineering plan for this, and it appears to be a good fit. So again, the request is for a grant application of $3 million with a match of $300,000. And these applications are actually due in August 16th.
Questions or comments?
So I noticed when I'm looking at the map, it has the potential to basically offset overtaxing the system by 250,000 cubic feet of water, I guess. And I don't know how significant that is. So these 100-year storms that seem to happen every 6 months, I'm wondering, would it have would this project, and I know this would be just one piece to a larger puzzle, what's the significance of 250,000 cubic feet? Obviously, we have a system that is being overtaxed. We have this huge storm, and we're getting 1.5 inches of rain in 20 minutes. How big of an impact is this in that area? And does this system, where the mall currently is right now, run into that pipe on Riverside Avenue?
This wouldn't have benefit to the areas that were discussed this evening.
Okay.
But it is, to your point, part of the larger issue that the city has of the fact that we have a combined sanitary sewer system throughout much of the city. And so any place that we can alleviate or remove stormwater from our system, the better off we are. So this might not directly impact the individuals that spoke this evening, but it will be part of a solution that improves the long-term impact on our system in rain events.
Right. So in that particular case, if the DEC gentleman discussed, let's say at 85%, 15%, that ratio could be used as, this could fit in well with that ratio to alleviate some of that 85% or 15%.
Correct.
For the city as a whole. Okay. That's good. And then we could work on other areas. So, all right.
Anyone else? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Counselor Weaver?
Yes.
Mayor Tully?
Yes.
Counselor Silly?
Yes.
Approved.
Our next item of business will be read by Interim City Manager Andrea Smith.
It's a resolution authorizing the submission of a 2024 Main Street Technical Assistance Grant.
Would anyone like to introduce this?
Move it.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Again, Andrea, provide a summary, please.
So this is the New York State Main Street Program, as I think we've talked about a number of times, has many programs available in it, but one of the programs that is designed to help communities consider and be better prepared for an actual Main Street application to provide funding to businesses is this technical assistance program. This particular program is for the development of design guidelines. So it's going to look at our zoning code and help us be better prepared for promoting the types of development that we want to see in downtown. So that once you have those in place and you're better positioned to receive funding through the Main Street program, which is the targeted Main Street program that provides funding for facade improvement, signage, streetscape, et cetera, which would follow in line with the design guidelines that were developed through this technical assistance program. So this is taking a stepped approach to a Main Street program. And this would, the maximum amount of grant for this program is $20,000, and our matching contribution is at least $2,000, $22,000.
Questions or comments? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim,
Yes.
Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
approved.
That brings us to old business. Does anyone have any old business?
I believe I do, yes. I'm looking for a couple of updates and may not have the answers this evening, but if we can get them in the near future. When is the cheese plant expected to be completely torn down? I think we're overdue for the date we're told. I thought, and I didn't go back and look, usually I'm pretty factual like that, but I thought we were looking at June 1st and to have it torn down, but it seems not to have made
The contractor did get they requested a 90-day extension. They received a 60-day extension. They are within that period of time, but I anticipate that they will be requesting another extension to complete the rubberization, backfill, final grading, as well as the actual demolition of the remaining silos.
Okay, good.
So they are within their contract, which did get an extension, and I anticipate after meeting with the contractor on site last Thursday that they will be doing another extension. So I really don't have a date for you at this time for when we expect it to be fully complete. But I will provide an update for you on that with what we know by the end of the week.
Okay.
Do you know why they're needing extensions? It's just a much bigger project than they anticipated it being. There are portions of the concrete, which is estimated between, when they were doing their estimates, typically between 4 and up to maybe 8 to 10 inches of concrete in some places. They have found areas where the concrete is as thick as 24 inches, so it's just been a bigger project. The same contractor separately has done work for the land bank, and so just kind of doing both of them simultaneously, I think, was a little bit more time consuming than they had originally expected.
I see many of the houses torn down, but not all the way as well. Getting complaints on that too, so. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm sorry.
Andy, along those same lines, I think it's 900 Caroline Street. There was a condemned house. I believe it was owned by the land bank that's been torn down. But for the last 2 weeks, there's a foundation with an orange fence around it. This is danger, asbestos. We get on them a little bit, so you try to get that cleaned up for the neighborhood.
It's 801 Caroline. And so the way that works, and the reason that those projects appear to be slow, is because they are condemned. All 3 properties that the land bank did demolitions on were condemned structures. And there's a new requirement, new in the last 12 months, I don't know the date exactly, that requires all lead testing prior to debris going to the landfill, in addition to asbestos testing. So because the structures are condemned, the lead testing has to be done post demolition. It takes about 5 to 10 days to get those results back from the lab. So after the building is demolished, the third-party air monitor comes, collects samples, sends those off. It can be about 10 days to get those back before we know whether or not it's within the allowable lead limitations to go to the standard landfill or whether it needs to go to a specialized landfill.
It just seems counterintuitive to me to do the job halfway. You know, the upper framing of the house is gone, but there's still debris and foundation and stuff there. And I understand it's another regulation that some bureaucrat passed that doesn't make any sense to any of us common people.
Council Stevens.
So this, I consider it old business because it's something that I think council has been dealing with for a number of years. But I received some new information this evening, as I think some of the other councilors that sat here before with raising the weirs in our storm sewer lines. I'm just wondering if we could get some information on that from Development Authority of the North Country, since they partnered with us with most of these projects. Perhaps at our next meeting, they could come and talk to us, because I never heard ever that that might have an impact on the homeowners that were hooked up to that same sewer line that we raised the weirs on. So if that's the case, I think we really need to get to the bottom of that. So I would appreciate that if we would consider, there's a consensus of council to ask for that. I think that would be very important to do as a first step. And then second, the East David grant, I know I had heard about that. Perhaps at the same time, we could get an update on that grant as well. Because if that is extending to that point and we know there's an issue there, I'd like to just, even if it's just giving the correct information out, I think it's important to have an update on that to the public so that we know what's going on with that grant, if there is any holdup, if it is in the works, et cetera. And then thirdly, I've had some inquiries, and I believe I sent an email a couple of weeks ago, if we could get an update also on the lights on the Oswegatchie. People have been asking about that, reaching out. If we could get an update on that, I'd appreciate that as well.
I think that was a personal fundraiser, wasn't it?
It was, but they're hearing, from the comments I'm hearing, is that the project's held up because the city wanted to wait and allow that to go forward once we had the construction and the rehab done along the Oswegatchie waterfront. So, and if it is a private project and still is, then maybe we just need to have that kind of information out there too. Again, it's just, people need to know what is a holdup, if it is us, if it isn't, and where projects stand. And that's all I have under old business.
Thank you.
I'm happy to respond about East David if this is
Please,
the
that'd be
appropriate
great.
time. So I think there is a little misconception about East David Street. We received funding through a CDBG application in 2022 to do the preliminary engineering report. And we did that, and we used that preliminary engineering report, which the preliminary engineering report identifies the needs to separate the storm sewer and to reconstruct our water and wastewater lines underneath East David Street. The report also provided costs for what that project would cost, inclusive of sidewalks and curbing. So we have that report. That report was the basis of applications submitted in 2023 through the New York State WIA grant program and WQIP program, along with the state's drinking water revolving state loan fund. Some of those were funded, some of those were not. If you recall at our last council meeting, or possibly the one before, we applied, the council approved resolution to resubmit through the WIA program for the drinking water portion, which was not funded in 2023. So we have resubmitted for the drinking water portion of that project. So if you want to think about the East David Street, it's a reconstruction project, because you're going to pull up the street and you're going to separate the sanitary from the storm, and then you're going to put in a new water line, a new sewer line, and a new designated storm sewer line, and then you're going to put back the street. So there's funding that pays for the street, there's funding that pays for the sewer line, and there's funding that pays for the water line. We have funding, we have received the funding for the wastewater portion and not the water portion. So the whole project doesn't have all of the pieces put together, but we do have applications out for each of the pieces. So those applications that were just submitted were submitted on the 14th of June. And we would anticipate to hear this year by the end of the fiscal year. The grants that were awarded have a 5-year grant period. So we haven't lost that funding, but that's why that project hasn't begun. So for those of you that thought we had all of the funding or that we were missing part of the funding, I think you're both right. We had all of the funding for the engineering part. We have part of the funding for the reconstruction, and we are seeking additional funds to complete that project.
Andrea, along that same line, since we are having so much issue with flooding of basements and fecal matter backflowing, when we do a reconstruction project such as sewer lines, is there a way to just book the cost of backflow valves to homes into that project or offer it at a reduced fee? Because it seems like the component itself is not very expensive. It's the labor to do it. So is that something that we could look at offering going forward?
Yeah, I think we absolutely could look at integrating that into a larger project cost. But the city does have a current backflow valve prevention program. I'm probably getting that wrong. But where homeowners can apply for a reimbursement, currently that reimbursement is up to $250 based on your costs. There's an application. You can contact the Department of Public Works for that application. And we have recently had conversations because costs have gone up. We haven't really addressed that level of reimbursement, and certainly, staff is in agreement that we could increase that reimbursement. So I think that you'll look to see a recommendation for updating that program and the reimbursement on that in the very near term. But there is a program and it does exist now, and it is on a reimbursement basis.
When that's brought forward to the council, could we ask that we have an estimate of an average cost of an installation of one of those, so we know what percentage we're going to be offering as a match or a reimbursement?
Based on the information that Shane and I have kind of looked at just very recently, I believe that the cost to have a backflow valve installed is on average somewhere between $800 and $1,000. And we would be looking to make a recommendation to increase the reimbursement to up to $500 based on $1,000 installation cost. So essentially 50%.
Thanks.
We just didn't have enough time to get that together for you for tonight's meeting.
Appreciate that.
Any other old business?
I have one still in there.
Yes, please.
Audits. The 2022 audit is a year and a half. There's no excuse for that. Can we get a hard date from somebody that we can expect something on at least the 2022 audit? In the 2023, again, we're looking 6 months, we're going to be waiting a year and a half on that one also. I don't know which firms are doing this, but we need to start rattling some cages, I think, to get things done. We have no idea. Well, we have an idea, but I'd like to see some firm financial numbers and auditors' recommendations before my term runs out.
We do have an audit committee meeting scheduled for tomorrow, and I would love for you to ask that very question of the auditors yourself.
Are they going to be here? At what time?
It's a conference call.
Yeah, you should have received a communication about that, an email. It's a conference call at 1 o'clock tomorrow.
1 o'clock, okay.
For the audit committee.
For the
The
audit
audit
committee.
committee.
Are you on the committee still?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay. Anyone else old business? Brings us to new business. Does anyone have any new business?
I had one item, Your Honor, that I had sent out to the council this morning. It's from the Fort De La Presentation Board of Directors. They have an extensive trail system that is open to the public. People have come from all over to walk that trail system. Unfortunately, some of the trail system is starting to be overtaken by weeds, and you can't really tell there's a trail there. The city is an owner of a box blade attachment that will clear the trail. I believe it was something that the city got through a grant program through Major League Baseball a number of years ago, and they are asking that we partner with them with the use of the box blade, however is most comfortable for the city if it's possible. And of course, they would make sure that anything was returned in the same condition as it was borrowed in, or if it's better for the city to feel comfortable to use their staff doing it, they're just asking for cooperation and working together. It's something that's only used maybe biannually, so it's not really productive for them to purchase one.
Yeah, so we received that request and I forwarded it to Andrea this morning for for staff to look at and get back to us.
Thank you so much.
Any other new business? Next, we have items for discussion. As our first item for discussion tonight, I invite Police Chief Kern to read to us a press release he issued late this afternoon.
Good evening. So this is a press release just giving council and the public just an update on the shooting incident that occurred on June 20th at the Ogdensburg Police Department. Today, 6 police officers and 1 civilian staff member from the Ogdensburg Police Department were interviewed by Sheriff's Office investigators. Following these interviews, both law enforcement and City of Ogdensburg administration had cleared these employees to return to work. 2 officers remain on administrative leave. One of these officers is the subject of the investigation, who is one Jessica Rivers, who's a 17-year veteran of our department. The second officer the injured officer, who is Daniel Hollister, who's a 7-year veteran of the department. I'm happy to state that Officer Hollister is now home. He's recovering from his injuries. This matter does remain under investigation by the St. Lawrence County Sheriff's Office as a criminal investigation. And besides a criminal investigation, it's also a independent internal investigation that is being conducted by myself and my administrative staff. There are no public safety concerns, and for that matter, there never was any public safety concerns in regards to this matter.
Thank you for that statement, Chief.
And send Officer Hollister all of our regards, please, and the department, sure.
Yeah, definitely.
I will.
Every aspect of it.
By all means, it's affected every member down there, so I appreciate that sentiment. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any other items for discussion?
I have on my list, as I said in the email, I wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about this backflow issue and these weirs in particular, in light of new evidence tonight presented by Mr. West. I was under the impression that the DEC actually mandated the weirs as they are, and I'm still under the impression that they inspect them, I think twice a year, to make sure that they're as high as they are. I mean, obviously we have a problem here, and I think that the weirs are certainly the cause, because since they've been installed, it seems everybody's got the same story. It's happened 4 times, and I think we need to address the issue and start tonight. And I think no matter what, if we have these weirs that are too high, they need to be reduced in height, like almost immediately, because and the DEC needs to understand, and we need to come up with a better system here. Because if we're flooding people's cellars with these weirs, then it needs to change. We can't have that. And I was hoping to get basically a description of what's going on tonight, either by city manager or Shane from Public Works, and kind of let the public know what's happening. And I think council needs to discuss this to the point of making some kind of decision tonight. A decision on possibly installing backflows for certain groups. We have troubled areas in the city, there's no doubt. And I think if this rain would have continued, there's a good chance that our brand new system would have shut down or been turned off. And that would have been completely catastrophic for the city. I can't even emphasize how catastrophic for the entire city, not just some of the homeowners. And we need action. We need action now, not just for the homeowners, but for the entire city. This is a very dangerous situation, very dangerous, and it needs to be addressed right now. Yesterday, really. I mean, last time it happened, I was right down there with Andy talking to her, Miss West, excuse me, And I wanted to reduce the weir fence. And I understand the DEC is, the way I understand it, the DEC has not allowed us to do that. And so I'd like to know what the story is. So.
Yeah, so at this time, I did ask Andrea and Shane to be prepared tonight to talk about the recent storm event, and the issues and the damages suffered by people in the community. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Andrea.
So first, thank you, Mayor and Councilor Scamperly. Shane and I have been able to work with our wastewater treatment plant operator and pull together some of the data from Thursday's storm. So I'm happy to share some of that with council and the public. We are not prepared to give you a recommendation on what to do tonight. I think Councilor Stevenson's recommendation to talk to our engineering consultant, to talk to the development authority, and bring a presentation to council to talk a little bit more about this and recommendations from the engineering company or from the development authority, from our plant operator, is prudent and something that we should do. The next meeting would be July 8th. So just, I'll give you some of the statistics and Shane can come and speak to some of the operations point side of this. But Thursday's storm brought 1.43 inches of rain in less than an hour. In fact, in just over 30 minutes. It did almost overrun our new wastewater treatment plant, which is astounding. During the peak, the wastewater plant meter was reading 1.8 million gallons, which is about 5,625 gallons per minute entering the facility. So it's very significant.
Would you repeat that, please?
8.1 million gallons or 5,625 gallons per minute entering the facility during that storm event. The plant itself is rated for 6.5 million gallons per day, or approximately 4,500 gallons per minute. So clearly that storm stressed our brand new system. The CSO meter, which is designed for bypassing the facility, was reading about 22 million gallons per day, or 15,280 gallons at the peak of the storm. The pump the meter got submerged, and so it stopped reading. So it didn't even, that reading isn't even a true reading of the maximum flow. And about 2.2 million gallons bypassed the plant through CSO number 001 during this single 30+ minute event.
What run is that?
Where is
001 Patterson?
The new Elizabeth Street pump station did function the way it was supposed to, and it did caption 151,180 gallons, which would have otherwise gone into the river in addition to the 2.2 million that I just noted. So there's some numbers to throw at you to help illustrate, in addition to everything that you heard tonight from residents, just how significant these events are. And Shane, if you have anything else that you want to add, you're welcome to do so.
As far as the weir is concerned, maybe I misunderstood too, like you did, Mr. Scamperly. I'm thinking it was a long-term control plan that was put together and DC approved back in 2017. Was that the last one? When we had our consent orders that required us to raise them. Maybe, I mean, I'm not sure who said how high they had to go, but I know they are inspected at least once to twice a year. Because as we talked, it would be nice just to go knock 6-8 inches off it.
Right.
Or try to angle it at a different angle.
I think that was the problem a couple of years ago. I don't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
A couple of years ago, that was actually the concern, was some of the angle in which it was coming in.
We talked extensively.
More
right.
importantly, right there in Franklin. Yeah, all right.
And, you know, and a good thing is we got our Main Street pump station up and running at full capacity, but also is pushing water faster across there than has ever been done. So there's less water overflowing over there and forcing it across the river to this side of the city too, which just came on board. There is issues, obviously, everybody's here saying it. mean, we don't, I don't have a solution. We can go to the DC, I'll call them tomorrow. But I think we are in the middle of another long-term control plan, which is required for our consent order, which we've talked about. I don't know what the recommendation was. My personal belief, we're probably still not at the 85% now with the new plant. I mean, we're still.
So I think if we ran this by the DEC and let them know what's happening, it sounds like Mr. West already has. I mean, until we come up with a better solution, I think we have to lower those weirs because of the situation. We just can't keep having people's cellars getting flooded. And I know that's just one spot. I don't know what's going on Patterson Street. It sounds like, and I remember talking about this and the concern of running partially on that street. If I'm not mistaken, it's two different systems on what would be the south end of Patterson, but then it flows into what was supposed to be a larger pipe of a combined sewer.
Yeah, it's separated. Then I think from Montgomery Street goes to Lafayette, and then everything from like Pizza Hut area comes down to Lafayette, and then they recombine together.
Right.
Into one pipe, which that
Getting
pipe.
overtaxed.
I would agree with that.
And that's what's happening here. And, I mean, I don't even know what the solution is there. If it's a weir or we got to tear up the whole street and redo it, and that'll be years. But
the solution would be, I mean, the right fix would be to run, the storm system to the river.
Yeah.
But as when I speak to everybody, the city doesn't have the money or the time to do that. It's going to take years.
I know.
And I know the backflow preventer isn't what everybody wants to hear, but it's the solution that I feel we have now to help people out.
Mm-hmm. I think I agree with you. I've been thinking about this. It's one of my points tonight. I think the city should, as Jen said, I had this down too, get some, maybe some quotes from contractors to go through and do it.
And I think the price is not to interrupt you. The price is going to vary depending on what they have to do with somebody. Some homes might be $800, which we've seen this year. A lady came in last week and had one done. It was like $1,100, I think, but she also had a new drain installed with it. It just wasn't itemized perfectly, so we couldn't break it out. So there is, we talked about it, you just have to find, I said, Andrew, maybe we can find 3 contractors. Maybe we could talk, a few homeowners to let them in there to see, 3 different situations to come up with a good price to reimburse.
Yeah. I mean, I wish we had this done for tonight because I'd like to actually make a motion to up the city's contribution. But if we can wait 2 weeks, we'll help another store.
Can I ask you a question, Dan?
Yes.
Can we lower the weirs without DEC?
Well, that's what I'm getting at too, is I want to, so Shane, he tells me he's going to talk to the DC and the engineers. And if there's a possibility that, listen, I don't think the DC is going to be happy the fact that these weirs are pushing water back in houses either. And if they just give us some time, can we lower these for a little bit and try and reduce that from happening again, that possibility? And meanwhile, we have to get an extension on our long-term control plan. Do you think?
Well, I think we have to reach out to the engineers on this because the weirs are a design feature to address a situation. This is going back to 2017, 18, 19 when the project was being designed. Right. Keep in mind, 17 and 19 were when the city and parts of New York State were seeing the worst flooding that we've seen in history. And so the state was developing standards and protocols to address flooding of the St. Lawrence River and its tributaries that we then had to comply with. So it may be that while the DEC didn't say you have to build weirs and they have to be this high, weirs was one of the solutions that could have been selected that clearly we selected. And they have a standard which they were built to. So if we are now saying, hey, the condition has changed and we want to change the weirs to reflect that, we have to go through a process. We can't just sit here tonight and say it's the weirs and we want to reduce them by a foot, by 6 inches, by 2 inches. We can't do that. We have to go through the process to evaluate them from an engineering perspective and then have a recommendation, which will have a cost, and we'll have to then consider that and how to accomplish it.
In expedited fashion, quite right. Along with our engineers, and then of course having to deal with the state. So ultimately anything that we're going to do is going to have to come through to some extent the DEC. And if some of these weirs are not adjusted the way they're supposed to be adjusted, or if they need to be lowered or raised, whatever the case may be, none of us up here are engineers, right? So with that being said, you know, but I think the quicker with the analytics that we have, and I get New York alerts, and every storm we get, I see what runs off East David, down Caroline, and down Patterson, 2.1 million untreated Thursday night. We just had a nice storm the other day, probably brought, I can pull it up, but you know, with all that aside, the quicker we move to get a quick, you know, a better solution to the issues that our residents are having with their basements in their homes needs to be expedited. You know, every 2 years, and not looking to, of course, to throw everything on top of you guys, but I mean, you know, I think ultimately at the end of the day, this could become a health issue, and a very serious health issue for many people. And with that being said,
in the middle of metering all of our CSOs for our long-term control plan, which has to take 3 months. So I think we started a little late. So I think they're going to meter June, July, and August to see what is going over, what's not going over. So every weir in the city or CSO overflow is being, you know, monitored right now for the next 3 months. To your point, maybe when we talk to the DC or we talk with our engineers, maybe we can ask to lower just the one. And maybe that will help. Maybe it doesn't have to be everyone.
If we can get that one lower.
So, but I, like to Andrew's point, I just don't think we can go in there with a sledgehammer and knock it over as much as, trust me, I'd like to just as much as everybody else would. But it also could turn around and bring, you know.
It'll help.
It could also bring a $36,000 fine per day to the
That's
city.
right.
You know,
That's
we
right.
We can't have that either.
Well, that's why I would like a discussion with DC and say, hey, we need to lower this.
I'll get with Christian in the morning and then.
or get the recommendation. I mean, we can't sit here and tell them that we need to lower them. Because we can't.
And we'll explain the situation.
I mean.
So, and then, but I don't think it's gonna be a, you know, a 2-week fix. I think they're probably gonna tell us, you know, if you wanna change that CSO, let's do it through your long-term control plan and prove to us that you're still capturing the 85% somewhere else.
And we're also having issues in other areas too, such as, you know, Roselle and
Right.
Green Street. We've got a permanent issue there. We've got an issue along Elizabeth Street.
Yep.
There's a lot of other areas that are experiencing the same issues that we need to pay attention to. So I'd be really interested to find out what the engineers say, what, you know, Development Authority of the North Country, because they were part of this recommendation. I'd really like to hear from them and then go forward with something that we could take action on.
Yeah.
So I
I mean,
appreciate your efforts today.
I'm in emergency mode here. You know what I mean? And if that plant has to get shut down.
Oh, I mean, it was just not Thursday. It was, I mean, I talked to Christian all weekend. I mean, it wasn't just them, you know, once, you know, we're probably still overflowing today. I mean, it takes days to catch up. You know, then we also have, you know, the million-gallon CSO tank that now we have to process that through. So with multiple days of rain, it's just sitting there, which creates, you know, our other issues we have, you know, with it just sitting there like a septic. So that it just, it's not, you know, it's awful for the homeowners. It's not good for the city either. You know, we just put a little over $40 million into a plant that was almost flooded.
Yeah.
You know,
What
so
would happen if that?
we'd have to shut the gates and just not allow nothing in the plant. Is what would have to happen. It would just all push to the river or push back up the streets.
Right. That's the problem. And that's why I'm calling this an emergency situation, because it is. It really is. If I had to live what these people are living and the videos I've seen and everything else, it's an emergency situation. And if that plant shuts down and this whole city has feces in their showers, this is an emergency situation. This has to be addressed ASAP. That's what I'm saying. And if the DEC can come here tomorrow and work with us and find a solution, I need a quick solution. We need a quick solution. You know, the last council pretty much ignored this, and this council can't ignore this. This is too much. This is going on.
But I think it would help, you know, the Franklin Street area to lower that one, but I don't think it's going to help the ones farther up.
Right.
They're not close enough to.
Right. And maybe that's a help. You know, that'll reduce the tax on the plant a little bit, as well as the home.
Because like, you know, each basin has its area, like, you know, a section of the city goes out through each, you know, CSO. So there's, you know, 17, I think, different areas that flow through the city.
Right.
Then come back together.
And then the other short-term action that I'd like to address is is raising the city contribution, possibly with a cap, so everybody in the city doesn't say I need a backflow. But I think that should happen almost overnight here as well, where we basically increase the city's contribution. It sounds like $250 isn't going to cut it.
Doesn't scratch the surface.
Many of these projects.
No, and that's what we discussed. We don't think it's enough either. I mean, it was probably enough 5 years ago to COVID hit, and now everything's, doubled or tripled in price.
Right. I'm thinking more like $500 or $800 at least, and maybe for starters, just to kind of give some people an option maybe this week.
Yeah, I'm sure if you guys want to bring a motion forward, I'm sure that we can change our paperwork.
If I motion to raise that, would you guys support that? I mean, let's have a discussion before we do, or because I'd like to see that number raised. I know in our update, the 500 was mentioned, which doubles it, what we're currently doing, but I'm thinking it's probably even more than that. But I also came in with the same idea Jen had of trying to reach out to some contractors, maybe even put an RFP in for some trouble areas and cap it within budget.
Well, why don't we get some ideas for some contractors and then.
My suggestion would maybe start with the 500 to help a little bit, and then maybe we can reach out and get quotes or ask people, and then maybe next meeting, if, we can give a recommendation if it should go up.
So a motion to raise the city's contribution to $500 per homeowner on a backfill with a cap of how much the city can actually do in our budget right now.
That's going to be, we might have to reallocate some funds because there isn't a
Right.
line for it.
I know.
Right now, we've been taking that out of regular maintenance line.
I mean, it ended up being kind of like redoing your concrete, right? Where you associate so much money, we have a cap every year.
I think it reads, 200, half of up to $500, which is 250. So I think if we wrote half of up to 1,000, which would be 500, but if someone came in at 800, they'd get 400.
Okay. Yeah, that's even a better solution. So,
but if it came in at 1,100, they're still only going to get the 500.
It's kind of a good compromise.
But is this is being expensed through the general fund?
I think we could probably expend it through the sewer fund.
I would be targeting the sewer fund as a way to cover.
Yep. I don't know if Angela, I don't know what our fund balance there is right now, but we could cap it off at how many ever individuals you guys think.
20 or 25,000 right now.
I think
Just for enough.
I think 2 years ago, the council budgeted $20,000 in that line, and not a lot of people took advantage of it.
Right. So maybe something along those lines.
And if that resolution is put on the table, I'll probably put a motion on the table because I'd like to have a fuller picture of where we stand. I'm not convinced $500 is enough.
Well, I agree with you. I think it's got to be high. So I think for the trouble spots, actually, the city should be paying.
So with that in mind, why, and like, as I mentioned, this needs to be expedited. And I concur with Dan and Jen, probably pretty much everybody up here, with the fact that this needs to be addressed and forthwith. But with that being said, the quicker we can get somebody to come in and take a look around and then come up with some idea with some contractors, the quicker, probably by the next meeting, we might be able to get a dive into the books, take a dive into the sewer fund, see what we've got readily available. And as the mayor said, I don't, $1,000 might not even scratch the surface, for as far as we're concerned. We're not flush with cash, but with that being said, we could surely look at something to quickly and hopefully before the next 100-year storm comes in 2 weeks.
It's like Dan said,
that we get some remedy.
All of a sudden you say, we'll reimburse $1,000, and all of a sudden 300 people say they want.
Yeah.
So now we're out $300,000 that we do not have.
And that's why, a good hard look by the engineers, by the DEC, and get some reputable contractors to come in and get some ideas. And I think it needs to be, again, not to stress it, but to be done quickly.
How fast could it be done?
We'd have to I don't know if we have to go the RFP route, or we can just go and ask 3 contractors to come in and give us a price. The issue is going to be is every home is going to be different.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I would like to be as generous as we can be with the reimbursement. but I think we need the information first. And we need
Yes.
to know where it's going to come out of, how we're going to cap it so we make sure we can pay the bills at the end of the day, because we have a sewer fund that we're paying for a $40 million upgrade for. So I want to be as generous as possible, but I think we need to have the nuts and bolts and do this in a very fiscally financial, responsible
And
way.
for the people that are here that are affected by this, and I don't want to speak for all the council, but I'm pretty confident in the fact that we're going to be looking to assist in this as quickly as possible.
And we know that, yeah, like we know the people obviously that are, I mean, they've been calling for the last 2 years. So, I mean, maybe we can devise something that, you know, we got to prove there's an issue before you put one in.
And grandfather some truck
Yeah.
spots in.
Yeah.
And that's what I really am getting at tonight, is we have some emergency here. We have an emergency of shutting a plant down, number one, which affects the whole city. And you got people dropping $2,000 to $4,000 into a flooded bank.
And the backflows aren't going to be the remedy, really.
Yeah.
You know, the preventers, they're not going to be the remedy for everything. They don't work for everybody. They don't work for your neighbor, Fred. And, you know, I know that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, listen, they carry weight, don't get me wrong, but they don't always.
Well, they got to be tied in properly.
Yeah.
You can't, like, there's a downfall to it. Like, you can't do a load of laundry and take a shower during a storm, because it's not going to allow anything out either.
Right.
It's not going to let stuff out. So if you're doing that in a storm, it's going to back up. So there, you know, there is issues with them, but I guess we'll call it a quick fix. I don't like that terminology, but.
All right, good.
It seems to me that a lot of these problems started with the Patterson Street construction project, and well before the sewer plant was completed, and actually before it was even started. So to me, the evidence kind of suggests that there's a problem with either the construction or the design of the Patterson Street sewer area. And if we coupled it with the fact that maybe these weirs are too high, there may be multiple causes, but the fact that their basements were flooding before these weirs were installed makes me think there's something going on there.
Well, I think
It was a fairly common occurrence on Elizabeth Street before they did the Elizabeth Street project. And I haven't had sewer in my basement since they did that.
Right.
But I did have before, you know, so it makes me think something happened there. You know, I don't know. At this point, all I know is that we have to come up with a solution, and we have to do it fairly quickly. These people can't wait another year and have their basements flooded 3 or 4 more times.
Right.
So Storm, to your point, when you live downhill on Elizabeth Street, you have problems. Believe me, my basement was flooded the other night. So I do understand, and I do feel the compassion for that. And you're going to find that you're going to have a lot of people that are going to come forward now that have been having issues and just got tired of saying it and got tired of calling. So we're going to have more people than we think,
What's
rightfully so.
overflowing there because they supposedly separated sewer and water? I know of at least one sewer that still drops into the.
There were a lot of mix-ups in
into the
that.
storm.
There were a lot of mix-ups in
Oh,
that.
they come back together at the opposite end of the street. That's the same thing with Patterson. They separate it through the whole street, then they come back together. I mean.
So what's the sense of
I don't know why they
separating them?
stopped.
What's the sense of separating them if they put them back together at the bottom?
I think at the time I brought that up, and they
That
told me
makes absolutely no sense at all.
Yeah.
I can't speak to that. It was well before
That was
my
long,
time.
that was sometime, I mean,
Policies
that's the problem
change.
before us now, right? You know, I mean, we can't do anything about
Cleaning
the
up after
infrastructure
other
that's in there now. You know, he mentioned Upper Patterson Street up around Pizza Hut where there's a smaller run, you know, and then channels into a smaller or larger.
They all channel back down to Lafayette.
They all
It's
channel
all
to Lafayette,
separated, and it all
right,
comes down and channels into, I think, a 24-inch pipe on Lafayette Street, then runs there, all the way through down to the river, over off Jefferson Street.
Okay, so we'll begin our research tomorrow with the appropriate consultative bodies and agencies. And then working with Mr. Cronus, coming to his first meeting on July 8th. We'll anticipate a presentation at that time from staff, giving us updated information with regards to the issues we've been discussing tonight, and some options, if not a recommendation, about how we might remedy some of the problems, particularly financial problems that have been suffered by homeowners.
And if we can get a recommendation, as Mr. Tully says, maybe for quick fix on those weirs or some weirs or a weir.
Yeah, I'll get with Christian tomorrow and we can reach out to the DEC and get with you. I think we have a meeting scheduled with the engineers Thursday, so we should get on with them too.
All right.
I think it might be helpful if we could see some kind of mapping system of the way that everything runs together too. Just for the general public when they're viewing the presentation and for us to see if there's like a pattern or any kind of the bottleneck happens with that. I think that would be very helpful too. And I would really like to see Development Authority of the North Country involved and invited to maybe participate in that presentation because they've had a big impact on this decision-making process over the last 10, 15 years.
Well, they may be able to assist us down the road as well.
Exactly.
And a bigger remedy.
Yeah, I'll reach out and see if they had anything to do with the raising of the weirs or that was their recommendation. I'm not really sure who
I know it was discussed.
was with them. Okay.
I mean, all that stuff began when Art Shore was city manager. I mean, I can remember Mike and I sitting here dealing with that. Talking about tanks and holding tanks and everything else.
Well, it was continued on the
Oh, yeah.
last council, when I was on
Every
council last time. And that was the decision, was to raise the weirs because we knew we were under the consent order. And this was going to be, my understanding was that it wasn't mandated by DEC, but it was a recommendation that we could reduce the influx of the untreated water into the river until we could get the new plant built and make some decisions on long-term decision-making solutions.
Which are, as I stated before, right in the middle of that study, which I think has to be done by the end of the year, possibly. We're behind a little bit on that, which comes into our consent order, which we've all talked about in the past.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else on council on this matter?
No.
Nothing on this matter.
Shane, thank you. And Andrea, thank you for your discussion on this. Any other items for discussion?
Just a quick, easy one, I think that would be good because the matter was brought up this evening about the weeds in the marina. I know we took some action on that recently, so could we just explain that so we could answer one question by one of our citizens?
So this is the second or third year that we will do a budgeted weed removal in the marina. It is mid-July. That was part of the notification that all people who renewed their slip or got a slip this year received that notification. They have to sign off on it because they are required to move their boat to accommodate that weed removal. But we don't set a date until we know what the conditions are and that they can do it at an optimal time. So mid-July is what we target, and an actual date has not been set, but the council did approve the contract with a new company this year, Weed Control of Northern New York, and that is on our schedule to do in mid-July.
Thank you so much.
Right, anyone else? I have a few. Earlier this year, City Council expressed its desire to honor Wayne Ashley for his contributions to the city. So in speaking with members of Wayne's family, the city is asked to consider possibly naming the public area under the Spring Street Bridge, Wayne Ashley Park. Family members state Wayne liked to enjoy time with family members at this area, enjoying an occasional lunch while watching the ducks navigate in the Oswegatchie River. So if council is supportive, we can ask staff to work on signage or a plaque to place at what would become Wayne Ashley Park, perhaps consideration of a couple of picnic tables, and we would have a ceremony to officially name the park, inviting Wayne's family and friends to join us. So with that, do we have support of council?
Absolutely.
Yes,
Ask
definitely.
staff to proceed. So we'll ask staff to start to make take those steps to make that happen. Thanks to St. Lawrence Federal Credit Union for their contribution of $8,750 to the city to allow the pool to be provided free of charge for the remainder of this summer season. This donation allows the city to achieve its budgeted revenue of $10,000 in 2024 for the pool, and all public swimming this season will be free. Over many years, the St. Lawrence Federal Credit Union has provided financial support to many deserving organizations in the North Country, such donations benefiting our quality of life for young and the not so young. And so to the administrative team, their staff, and to their board of directors, again, thanks for making the city pool available to our community at no charge to its users this season. Last week, the city received notice from the New York State Office of Real Property Tax Service that its 2024 equalization rate is 100%. This shouldn't be surprising since the citywide property revaluation was performed 2 years ago, but I think it's good to know that the state recognizes the city's property assessments are at full value. And then congratulations to the Ogdensburg Seaway Festival Special Events Committee for their great success in letting the community enjoy the Ogdensburg Riverfest block party on Saturday, June 15th. There were many food and craft vendors, there were bounce houses for the kids to enjoy, and the band Another Fine Mess played all afternoon to the enjoyment of the hundreds of people who visited the event. I believe event organizers have already announced plans to bring this party back next year, which if so is welcome news for our city. So again, thanks again to the event organizers for a great time that day. And then my last one, on behalf of City Council, I extend our thanks to Andrea Smith for her administration of the city as interim city manager this past year, having been appointed interim city manager on June 7, 2023. Andrea's willingness to continue to serve in this capacity since this city council was formed on January 1 allowed us to take the time we believed we needed to conduct a proper search for a city manager. Since becoming mayor on January 1, I have seen firsthand Andrea's commitment to the city of Ogdensburg as interim city manager. She did not just go through the motions of managing a job from 8 to 4 each workday. She was fully vested in the job, on call 24/7, attending the many public functions expected in the position by council. I believe she was and will continue to be well respected by city employees, particularly by the department heads she has supervised this past year. And Andrea will continue to be a key player in the city's leadership team, but I hope she'll be able to enjoy a bit of downtime beginning July 1. And so with that, Andrea, thank you. Anyone else with an item for discussion?
I think Andrew's always been fully invested in the city of Ogdensburg and appreciate it. Thank you so much. In whatever capacity you've been in over the years, all the capacities. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I'd like to echo those same sentiments. It's been a joy to watch you be at every event and not just be at the event, but engage with those events. So I thank you for all of that. It has been noticed by the public and it's been noticed by all of us. And thank you again for that.
I'm always amazed you're like a walking book of like these.
And by being new, you're very helpful. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that brings us to citizen participation. At this time, if anyone attending in person would like to address council, please come down to the podium and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much for your response tonight in regards to the sewer stuff. It was disheartening that 2 years ago, I did feel that this was kind of brushed off and there was other excuses given. So thank you. And I do think that it needs to happen sooner than better. And does anybody have any suggestions for the city? What was that, Kathy, that I put in that 2 years ago? A complaint or whatever, and the city manager had to
file a claim.
File a claim, and then it was shot down because that was like close to $5,000 that has already come out of my pocket for the first 2 times that this has happened. So I didn't know if you guys could think about that. And we have had an estimate done for the backflow preventer, and our estimate was $3,000. So thank you very much for thinking about the more money, because it isn't, I mean, the 250 is probably hence why we didn't go ahead, because I'm already in the whole $5,000. So, and because I just did another $4,000 out of my pocket for this cleanup of the sewage treatment in my basement, I do thank you for the urgency in this, because I hold my breath every time there's a storm, because as you can imagine, when you go down and my husband works away out of town, I'm always by myself and I have stuff blowing up in my basement that is sickening, and really, really hard to deal with. So thank you for listening and the urgency that you plan to take moving forward.
Thank you, Andy. Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to address council, please use the raise hand feature. The city clerk will recognize and unmute one person at a time, and you will have 2 minutes.
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor.
We have 2 resolutions for executive session. I'll introduce the first. Whereas the interim city manager requests meeting with city council in executive session to discuss proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property where public discussion would substantially affect the value thereof. And whereas New York State open meetings law permits city council to adjourn to executive session for such purpose. Now therefore be it resolved that city council adjourn to executive session to discuss proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property. Be it further resolved that any action resulting from this executive session shall be taken in open session. I so move.
Second.
Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Trim? Yes. Counselor Weaver?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Selly?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Approved.
Next, whereas the interim city manager requests meeting with city council in executive session to discuss the matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. And whereas New York State open meetings law permits city council to adjourn to executive session for such purpose, now therefore be it resolved that city council adjourn to executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. And be it further resolved that any action resulting from this executive session shall be taken in open session. I so move. Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Counselor Weaver?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Selly?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Approved.
We do not anticipate any action following executive session, so I will make a motion to adjourn from executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.